Good morning and welcome to BCP Council's Cabinet meeting for February, and welcome to those online or catching up later. So just before we go into the formal agenda, we need to refer to our housekeeping document. So Sarah Colwick will read that out for us. Sarah.
Thank you. Please note that this meeting of the Cabinet is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast site for a minimum of 6 months. Please could everyone present follow these ground rules. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. If accessing via Teams, turn on your video function when invited to speak and state your name. And please use your microphone when speaking and mute or turn off your microphone when you're not talking. If you're accessing via Teams and you'd like to speak on an item, please indicate this by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window. For those in the room, if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point along Braidley Road under the flyover or in the surface car park at the front of the building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very, very much. Okay, so let's move into agenda item 1, which is apologies. I believe we've got apologies from Councillor Mark Anderson, who's joining us online. Thank you, Mark. Nicola and Mike Green, and also we've got Councillor Barron and Councillor Johnson, who are at a fire authority meeting today. I don't believe there are any others we've been notified of. Okay, thank you. So we move to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. I'm not seeing any, so I will move to Councillor Brooks. Nigel, good morning.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Agenda item 8, Budget and Medium-Term Financial Plan 23-24. For transparency, I'm a director of Bournemouth Building Maintenance Limited and also a director of Seascape South Limited, and they provide dividends back to BCP, and also a board representative at Bournemouth the Development Company as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nigel. That's appreciated. Come to Councillor Hazel. Hazel.
Morning. I would just like to do a declaration on the item with regards to the Health Hub, just to say that I work within the NHS and care for patients with homelessness. So I have an interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And come to Councillor Rampton. Karen, hi.
Thank you, Jared. Similar to Councillor Nigel Brooks, I'm a director of BBML.
Yeah, and I know the Deputy and myself are also directors of a number of council companies as well, so but they're all on the public record. Any other declarations of interest? Okay, thank you very much. So then we will move to agenda item 3, which is a confirmation of minutes. They've all been circulated, so do I have any comments on those? I will propose them. I believe Councillor Broadhead is seconding. Any, all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous, thank you. So moves us on to agenda item 4, public issues. We don't have any questions or petitions submitted from members of the public this morning. We are pleased to welcome 4 statements from members of the public, and I believe most of those members of the public are in the room. And so we now move firstly to it's Brett Spiller from Chapman Lee Planning, agenda item 11. Brett, if you could perhaps join us, and when you're ready to speak, if you just press the right hand side button and the red light will come on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, our statement specifically relates to item number 11, so perhaps if you could just bear that in mind when you come to that particular item. We're extremely concerned that paragraph 13 of the cover report appears to prejudge the outcome of a live government consultation. The decision to pursue option 1, that's one of the growth options, is seemingly preemptive of consideration of the feedback from the issues and options consultation, is predicated on some false assumptions in the Iceni housing needs assessment, something pointed out in a report by Turley's. It's falsely presented as this option wasn't premised on gentle densification. Finally, combined with no greenbelt release, option 1 places over-reliance on council-led regeneration sites, some of which have failed to deliver over the past 20 years and won't deliver family homes or a significant number of affordable homes. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, and we will bear those comments in. I'm sure the portfolio holder will reference them in agenda item 11. Thank you. Yeah. So we now have it's Karen Loftus from the Community Action Network, reference agenda item 8. Karen, very good to see you. And when you're ready, please just press the microphone and begin. Hi.
All right. Oh, there we go. Pressing the wrong thing. Hello. I'm Karen Loftus, Chief Executive of Community Action Network. And on your agenda today, we are proposed cut number 129. And this is our written statement. Please don't agree to cut our core operating grant in half. Your grant enables us to deliver key services for and with you, plus attract considerable inward investment to the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole and Dorset Council areas. Last year, this was over £5 million. Please consider extending as is for 1 year only, giving us all time to have wider discussions within the integrated care system on funding this essential work. Community Action Network inspire community action by empowering the voluntary sector to survive and thrive, enabling volunteering and connecting communities by championing and representing local charities and community groups, creating environments for community-led empowerment. Thank you. I've also emailed you.
Yeah, thank you. We've got that, and I will personally reference the points made when we bring forward agenda item 8 as well. So thank you very much. Then we've got Jeremy Gardner, Gardner of Bellway Homes and Miller Homes, who has asked our Democratic officer to read the statement out. So, Sarah, thank you.
The statement comes from Jeremy Gardner on behalf of Bellway Homes Wessex Limited and Miller Homes is agenda item 11. Firstly, the proposed preemptive changes to the emerging BCP local plan are premature pending the government's responses to the MPPF consultation. Fareham BC prepared a draft local plan based on consultation revisions to the standard method in August 2020. The government did not implement the proposed revisions, so Fareham had to prepare another local plan, causing delay, wasting public money and creating confusion. Secondly, the consultation is clear that not following standard method housing requirements will only be allowed in exceptional circumstances. It is far from clear that BCP circumstances are exceptional. Indeed, the Council's consultation response acknowledges this.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we will then move to Zoe Bradley, who's a Chief Exec of Citizens Advice Bureau, and so I believe this again is in relation to agenda item 8. Thank you.
Morning. And again, as Karen said, this is referencing 129 on the budget reduction of Cité BCP. We have the largest cost of living crisis in decades, needing crisis support. Over 15,000 people came for advice in 2021-22, over 30,000 issues. Money, debt, immigration, benefits, housing, consumer. 2023 figures are expected to reach 20,000 people. Crisis support in 2022 increased by almost 200% compared to 2021. More than 3 times as many people are struggling to pay their energy bills than in 2021. Homelessness is now more than 2016. Domestic abuse, we've seen a 75% increase. 2023 will be the year of debt crisis. Capacity to respond to current and emerging needs across BCP are stretched beyond imagination. We are the 4th emergency service.
Thank you very much. And, you know, just to say that those comments have absolutely been heard, and I look forward to talking through them when we get to agenda item 8. Okay, so then that moves us to agenda item 5, which is recommendations from the overview and scrutiny committees. I don't believe there were any formal recommendations, but I'll bring the chairs in as and when the items that they've reviewed, the committees have reviewed, to make any statements around that as and when we get to them. Thank you. And I welcome. I can see a number of our chairs online, so thank you very much for attending today. Then we move to agenda item 6, which is the housing revenue account, budget set in 23-24, and I believe Councillor Karen Rampton is proposing. Karen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the housing revenue account, HRA, as most people will know, sits within the council budget, but is ring fenced, and what comes in and what goes out in terms of the council's 9,500 rented properties, just over 1,000 leasehold and 33 shared ownership properties across Bournemouth, and sold the stock some years ago. So it's just Bournemouth and Poole at this stage. And the income from rent and other charges is around 51 million. Last July, a new housing management was created, BCP Homes, which oversees services delivered to tenants and leaseholders, and creating this has made some savings of 300k. A housing advisory board has been set up and is running well. It's made up of independents, residents, and 2 councillors, one being my colleague on my right, Councillor Jane Kelly, and the other one is myself. The board oversees delivery of services. There are also 4 resident panels and a resident committee who can and do hold us very well to account. The housing revenue account has a surplus of over 11 million, and over 5 million of that paid in interest. 6.6 million will be transferred to reserves, of which just under 2 million will be an untouched reserve, with the rest invested in building our new homes and our major works. The housing revenue account has challenges ahead in terms of several national policies. For example, the Housing Ombudsman has greater powers, and we need to ensure that we are adhering to complaint handling code, that we manage our complaints effectively, and that we have sufficient resource to meet our duties around damp and mould following the tragic death of a young child in Rochdale. Also around building safety, and when the new set of tenant satisfaction measures comes into force in April 2024, that we have diligently collected the data which will be required. We need to set up a complaints procedure which will be different from the council one, and we need to be ready for inspection by the regulator from next April. Additional resources have been set aside within the HRA budget requirements. A strategic liaison group has been set up to ensure that we are consistent in the way that we deal with damp and mould issues across our council properties and in our private rented sector. There's also the Building Safety Act, which imposes new obligations for managing higher risk buildings, and which are those over 7 stories or 80 metres, and they will require a more effective management of the risks, maintaining safety and reporting to the new regulator, and of course engaging with our residents, because residents are at the heart of everything that we do. So, digital switch over. We need to work to replace our hardwired emergency alarm systems in our sheltered housing, and we still need to identify the most effective approach to that. Moving on to the cost of living crisis, and we have obviously increased costs. We all have increased costs, but our residents have increased costs for energy and food. There is government support, and those people who are in receipt of benefits are entitled to additional cost of living payments. And there's just a little bit I wanted to say about the charges in terms of heating, because it's obviously a massive worry to people. So residents on our communal heating systems are not protected by the energy price guarantee or the energy price cap, and this is because communal heating systems are not defined as domestic supplies. To help keep charges down, the government introduced the Energy Relief Scheme, which does give some money back to the council to reduce the cost of communal heating. We've passed this on to residents, but we've also further restricted increases in charges to the increase in the energy price guarantee, energy price cap. And that means that our residents who are on communal heating systems get a much higher level of protection than they would otherwise have. In addition, residents on communal heating systems will also get help through the Energy Bill Support Scheme, which currently provides households with £400 off their energy bills. And the government has set up a portal for residents to apply for this. And once we have the finer detail of this, we will be informing residents and we will be able to assist them with their applications for this, should they wish us to do so. So I'm not going to talk about the CNAS, and I always forget what the abbreviation is, but my colleague, Councillor Broadhead, will be covering that. That's in paragraphs 64, 67. Paragraphs 206, 213 does set out other support for residents and in mitigation of the increase in costs. But we have protected our residents from the huge increases they might otherwise be facing. So moving on to the rent, and paragraphs 89 to 112 talk about the rents. So the arrangements for increasing rents and service charges are separate to arrangements for increasing fees elsewhere in the council, and they are set out in law and regulation. So proposing that rents will increase by 7%, and that's in line with recommended cap. We could actually increase rents in sheltered housing by the formula, which is normally CPI plus 1%. That would have made it 11.1%, but we're proposing to keep it to 7%, and indeed many other providers have done the same thing. Now, relets, if somebody is moving to a different property or somebody is moving into a property, the rents will be at the formula rent of 11.1%. If we didn't apply the rent increase, the income to the HRA would be reduced by £10 million by 26-27. The government's intention with the rent cap is to protect existing tenants from a large inflationary rent increase, and garages will go up by 10%, which is in line with the council's overall approach to charges. Leasehold charges are slightly different, but they'll go up at 7% in Poole and in line with costs in Bournemouth. And we have applied the 7% cap to service charges where it's feasible, in line with government advice. Corporate priorities, I'm jumping about here, but paragraphs 58 to 62 talk about support for our corporate priorities, our sustainable environment, building of energy efficient homes, our new passive house homes, and planning for retrofitting to help deliver on our carbon reduction programme. As I said, my colleague will talk about the new build and the acquisitions programme. Collected communities, that new structure that I mentioned earlier, the panels and the Housing Advisory Board, it's to give residents a true voice, a say in the service design and how BCP Homes is managed. And there's also a focus on antisocial behaviour, which is it can be an issue for some people. Yeah, I've said that bit already. Sorry, I've written a couple of things down twice. I don't really want to repeat myself because I'm aware that time is fairly short. So the expenditure, we're going to spend 27 million on the day-to-day maintenance of homes and the supports to residents, and the proposed expenditure on planned maintenance and new homes is just under 57 million. Just touching on the equality implications, obviously the rent increase will impact on all protected groups. The mitigations as set out, as I've set out, will help. There are lots of services which will support those in protected groups, and will continue to do so if we increase our rents. So some of the services that we can provide: adaptations for our residents who have a disability, accommodation for specialist groups, for example, care leavers, prison leavers, people with disabilities. Just to mention as well, Chair, that when people are looking through the report, they might think, oh, that's different. Why is it different in Bournemouth and Poole? It's because we still have to do a lot of work on alignment of services, and that's something that we will be doing, and we're setting up. But there's a large degree, and I know Councillor Butt is probably listening to this, and she'll be pleased to hear that there will be full consultation with residents before we do that alignment process, and I would hope that she would be very much involved in that. In terms of damp and mould, you'll notice in the budget that we have put aside 500k, which is to invest in damp and mould preventative measures. And so I will go to the recommendations, if I might, Chair, and I would recommend to Cabinet A, which is Roman 1 to 7, B, Roman 1 to 3, and C be approved by Cabinet. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that very full introduction. And I'll come to Councillor Broadhead to second. Phil.
Thank you very much, Chair. A brief second, and absolutely delighted to do so. First of all, I would like to echo Councillor Rampton's points and put on record our huge thanks to the wider housing team. The job that they do is difficult in the best of times, but in this environment, not just of the cost of living crisis, which puts a burden onto particularly those who are the most vulnerable, who need our support more, but also the inflationary environment, the fact that's had on our delivery, the way that they've stepped up, continued to deliver the services to those most in need, and continued that momentum, I think is absolutely to be applauded. I think we've got one of the best housing teams in the whole country. In my seconding, I'll briefly bring out the points that Councillor Rampton alluded to around our delivery side, because it's a key priority within the HRA to develop those new homes, as I mentioned, for those with the most housing need. And within our relatively recent council new build housing and acquisition strategy, we set out how we're going to do that, how we're going to bring forward new homes, either through acquisition or development through the HRA, that will help those most in need. We set a very, I think, a lofty aspiration when we launched that about a year, 18 months ago, to deliver at least 1,000 homes of mixed tenure on the council-owned lands through a 5-year period. I'm pleased to re-announce, because I've said it many times, Chair, that we're now on track for about 1,400. Obviously, there'll be lots of bumps along the way, but I really think it shows the commitment from the whole team, not just to improving and protecting the housing stock that we've got, but to bring more into the future as well. Within the report, it outlines a number of the ones that we've actually delivered this year alone: Luckham Road and Charminster Road, Moorside Road in West Howe, and Mountbatten Gardens. Those are the ones that have either been completed or acquired just in the last year. But as I mentioned, within that 1,400 wider programme, there's a lot more to come, many of which will fit the specific housing needs that we know we need through our independent housing needs assessment that we've done. So we know where that need is. We're gearing the programme of acquisition and development towards that, and we'll have a lot more to announce soon. Kind of final point from me, it is a wider programme as well. So within our team in future places as well, that have been looking at our regeneration sites, we've recently approved the outline business case of the Constitution Hill development, which will actually be taken forward by our housing team again to bring forward council housing delivered programme there. Future Places has done a fantastic job of looking at all of the different options for that site, and come to the conclusion that we've got the skills and the talent in-house to drive that forward. And again, that will be mixed tenure as well. I would point out our dismay at the recent fire at that development, so we'll be looking closely to make sure what impact that will have on, and actually, if I may as well, discussed at some people that think it's fun to go out there and destroy public buildings. Not only is it not fun, it's not the right thing to do, but actually these developments are geared to supporting our most vulnerable as well. So shame on you, in my view. But the team are cracking on with all of the things within the HRA of acquisition and development, even in these tough times, and that's a key part of the programme. So on that basis, absolutely delighted to second.
Okay, great, thank you. So no of our wider councillors coming in, so I'll go to Cabinet, and Jude. Good morning, Jude Butt.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for those submissions with regard to this item. Obviously, engagement is key in everything, pivotal, and I'm very pleased to have heard that reference. However, I just wondered if I could have some clarification on Appendix 7, which is our BCP Homes Delivery Plan 23-24. We look at the housing management actions, and I'm rather disappointed that Action 1 and 2 and 15 are deemed to be low priority, because these are all around the engagement arena. And whilst, you know, it may not be fiscally something which is going to be rushed out with regard to the magazine to be put out, and I can understand that to an extent, because there's a cost. But again, it is about informing and engaging with our residents, our tenants. One of the things I think which is mainly concerning me is the demonstrate support for community engagement projects that enable the council to meet its strategic objectives and empower residents to contribute to their communities. That's 2. And then we go to 15. I'll read it quickly. Maintain regular contact with registered providers within the BCP area to share issues and good practice regarding housing management issues. And they all sit around the engagement arena, and they all sit around engagement is the starting point as to where we end up with all projects and all the service provision. So I'm just wondering why those priorities are deemed to be low, because obviously in my engagement book, they are not deemed to be low at all. I'm just wondering if I could have an explanation around that area. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Okay. So I'll just see if there are any other members of the Cabinet wishing to come in, which I'm not seeing. So I'll come to Councillor Rumpton to sum up and incorporate the comments from Councillor Butt. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm really sorry, Councillor, but I think your sound was slightly going in and out, and maybe my hearing isn't as good as it used to be. So apologies if I didn't hear all of what you said. But I think you said about low priorities under housing management actions in terms of Residents Magazine and support from community engagement projects, and there's no reason why that couldn't be looked at, and be grateful for your input. Thank you. Chair, not much more to say in terms of it. I would just commend this report to Council, and my apologies, and Councillor Broadhead thankfully said thank you to everyone involved in putting this report together. It's a huge piece of work, and I would like to add my thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure we all would as well. It's a huge piece of work. It's also great to see in one place, you know, the scale of what we're doing and achieving there as well. So thank you. Okay, so I'll move back to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Okay, thank you. That is approved. Let's move to agenda item 7, which is mainstream schools and early years funding formula. So I'll come to Councillor Mike White. Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Dedicated schools grant, the DSG. We're talking here about some £334 million, which provides funding for both early years and mainstream schools. Now, the content and the process for allocating this funding is very highly regulated. It involves extensive consultation with schools and with the overseeing general body, the schools forum. Now, the recommendations we have in front of us are supported by the schools forum, and council's recommended to approve them. I mean, realistically, the only possible concern we could raise is in relation to recommendation 3, where there is proposed a transfer of 185k to spend on early years high needs. We could appeal to the DA and argue that this should be put against the growth in the overall deficit in the high needs budget, which, as you know, is projected to be some 200 million over the next 4 to 5 years. Our officer advice is that realistically, this has almost no chance of succeeding, given the strength of the views of schools and the schools forum. And in any case, we're working with the Department for Education to reduce the deficit via their DBV, Delivering Better Value program. So the net of this is that I commend the recommendations as is to Cabinet. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, and echo the comments you've made, and I'm perfectly happy to second that. I just have a look to see if we have any members of the wider council looking to come in on this item. I don't, and I don't have any other members of Cabinet wishing to speak on the item. So unless I hear that, I will move to the vote. Recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Councillor White. That is that's approved. So we now move to agenda item 8, which is the budget and medium-term financial plan for 23-24, which I will present. Just in starting that, please can I thank the contributions we've had from members of the public and our key stakeholder groups this morning, Community Action Network and Citizens Advice Bureau. We've had a number of engagements with our partners across the spectrum since we presented a budget and before. Appreciate the engagement and the work that's been done on those. Okay, so in terms of the budget paper in front of us, this is a particularly difficult set of circumstances in terms of the cost of living crisis that we weren't aware of at this time last year, but has impacted our budget in year, £25 million, and the budget for this year, in terms of we're looking 23-24, there's effectively £30 million of extra pressure through the cost of living crisis that we weren't expecting. I'm really pleased that we've been able to work very, very diligently, very, very hard across Cabinet. Thank you, colleagues, and our CMB team to turn that in-year position around and still deliver a surplus. We're on track to deliver a surplus of over £10 million for this year. That's fundamentally important because it allows us to move that surplus forward to support this year's budget that we see. So there's been a lot of work that's gone into it, and I thank colleagues for that. What we're looking to do here is to continue the work we've been doing since August, which is responding in a traditional local government way to balancing our budget, maintaining services, and that is exactly what we've done. And this gets us to a position of service delivery. What isn't traditional in terms of the approach we've taken is to break down some of the savings into separate lists, list 1, list 2, which you'll see in the report. And in particular, what we're looking to do with list 2 savings is to fund them for the first quarter of 23-24. We are desperately seeking to avoid having to make those savings. We need to be ready to make them if we have to, but we're trying to find scenarios where we do not have to make those. So we're trying to give ourselves all opportunity to protect those savings. We heard very, very eloquently from both CAN and CAB how important the services are and how needed those services are. And I think we can say as an administration, we absolutely agree that we've previously put our money where our mouth is and materially improved in our 2 years of administration the budgets across the community support sector as well, because we know how much we value that, and actually we're trying to move towards an enabling model where we can enable groups and communities to do more and be more supported to respond to what our community's needs are. So we're trying exceptionally hard. We've also said in terms of some of the coverage in relation to this budget that we will work up until the deadline when we get to council. Any budget amendments need to be with a section 151 officer by next Wednesday and be published next Friday, and we will take that time to review effectively any areas that we're able to improve the budget, because we desperately want to make less of those savings, and also we have an ambition around council tax. Just note, you'll see in the budget paper we've our historic, for the last 2 years, this administration's council tax policies will have saved the council taxpayers £62 million by the end of the next term. So we have an ambition around low council tax. We've delivered low council tax. By the end of next term, there'll be £62 million more in local taxpayers' pockets than if we hadn't set forward on what is one of the lowest council tax policies across the country for upper tier local authorities. So that's our ambition. So Karen investing in our place, Karen on investing in our communities. And to do that in a low tax environment. You'll see that this report suggests council tax at 4.99%, so that's less than half of inflation that we've been running at, so it's created some significant pressure. that also underlines our long-term message that council tax is not the solution, to funding local government. We have again in this paper, £25 million of extra investment in adult social care, which we're proud to make, and because we would 1% on council tax, I believe, gets us in the region of £2.3 million. So in no way is council tax going to be able to feel the pressure any other tier of authority faces around adult social care. I want to spend a little bit of time also talking about children's services. We've made a really strong commitment, but in the strongest way possible, that children's services is our absolute priority. Improving children's services are our priority as an administration, and I think our actions speak clearly on that. So we've effectively already put over £20 million into the budget over our last two budgets, and now I believe it's another £14 million, which is nearly doubling the amount of children's services budget from when we took office. So absolutely putting our money where our mouth is and supporting vulnerable children in our community. And we really welcome the leadership our new DCS, Cathy Hadley, has done in that space, and the support we're getting from our improvement partners in Hampshire as well. So we've got a budget that is traditional. We've got a budget that is ambitious around trying to find ways to create ability, further down the line to make further investment and stop some of the challenging decisions that we've heard about this morning. And I'm happy to commend this. We are a no overall control administration, so what we've tried to do is enhance our transparency and our openness around seeking full council suggestions, and I've had a number of councillors and groups looking to work with us on that basis, and we still have time until next Wednesday to take more feedback. So we'll continue to do that. One of the reasons we've wanted to do to allow us more time, both through potential amendments, but in terms of the list 2 savings being funded for the first quarter of the year, is our track record of delivery around our outturn. So we've been able to, as I referenced earlier on, deliver material positive outturn in the 2 years we've been in administration. Last year it was in the region of £15 million. This year it's already projected to be £10 million, and we did put an expenditure cap on certain key areas in, so we expect that to improve. If that does improve, as it has always done in our history, then we will be able to, in first council, will be able, of the new administration, in terms of after post elections, will be able to make decisions to maintain and invest in services. To that end, I've been asking our council officers to work very hard in terms of the current outturn and make sure that's an updated figure. And also, we had the final local government settlement clarified earlier in this week. And Adam Richards, our Director of Finance's team, and myself have been working closely on that. So I will be bringing Adam Richards in to give an update on some news we're working through at the moment on that. So we'll do that shortly. Perhaps before we bring Adam Richards in, I'll ask Councillor Broadhead to, I believe you're seconding the item, and there's obviously a huge amount of detail in this paper. Very happy to take questions, but hopefully that was a useful introduction. Phil.
Thank you very much. And again, very happy to second. You've gone through most of the pertinent points. We are in very, very challenging times. Businesses feeling it, residents are feeling it, and of course councils are feeling it as well. And talking to colleagues around the country, there is no local authority that I know that is sat here doing their balanced budget. It's a legal requirement to do a balanced budget every year that hasn't had similar levels of challenge that we have. And as you referenced, £55 million extra out of nowhere this year, that just the cost of running council operations has run. The example that we quite often use, just £2 million alone just to power our street lights, extra £2 million extra to power our street lights than what we forecast in March, leaves a very, very difficult scenario. And that's why I would echo your points around the collective effort, getting early on in summer, getting ahead of that, and leaving ourselves in a position where we've got at least a £10 million surplus in these unprecedented times, means that we can avoid some of those very, very difficult decisions that others are having to make. Chair, you talked repeatedly about the work that we've done on this and the fact that it is a traditional budget, and I would agree, but one of the things that isn't traditional is what we're doing, which is keeping at it. You know, the commitment that we've made, that this budget that is in front of us right now for approval, it's steady, it's balanced, and it does all of the things that we want to about avoiding any difficult decisions. But we do still think that we can go further. As you referenced, you know, we have had positive outturns in the past. We keep working cross-party with other councillors, and as we've heard today from a number of stakeholders as well, the representations that they've made, the solutions, as we've heard from our colleagues in Cannes, the opportunity with the integrated care system for doing things differently does mean that I think we do still have a little bit of way to go within this budget, and it is not traditional to keep at it, but I think it's exactly what the council taxpayers of BCP would expect us to do. You also mentioned, Chairman, that your strong view is that council tax is not the solution to every problem, one that I heartily agree with. And that's why for a number of years we have been looking at creating new sources of income, new ways to provide services differently, so that we don't just keep reverting to the easy answer of putting the burden onto quite often those most vulnerable as services increase. And we've been doing that in a whole host of ways. We've got a number of council-owned companies. Our Seascape group, Seascape Homes and Property, is a very good example that has been investing in homes to avoid people that find themselves in a homeless position having to be provided by very expensive bed and breakfast care. And in the most recent meeting of that, since we started that a number of years ago, not only have we housed hundreds of people that would have found themselves in temporary accommodation otherwise, but the combined cost of the cost avoidance of very expensive bed and breakfast care, coupled with actually those assets increasing in value, is that we're probably £10 million better off just by that initiative alone, as well as improving the lives of normal people. That's an income stream and not council tax, which this council has done to protect services and avoid having to increase council tax. And again, you look at our incredible seafront operations, the work that we've done on new and exciting pop-ups along the seafront. We hear a lot of negative press about one of those in particular. The pop-ups and the seafront operations this year generated an incredible and record-breaking £6 million of profit, not only providing better services for visitors and residents, but also avoiding us having to make very, very difficult service cuts or dramatic ongoing increases in council tax as well. Precisely what we need to be doing more of, and that's exactly what we've been doing to date. And a final point for me, and I've mentioned before that we are not in competition with other local authorities. It's not about preening and showing off. But I do think it's worth colleagues reflecting on the shared difficulties across local government in this budget setting environment because of this cost of living crisis. But actually the comparison between the budget that we're seeing in front of us and the work that we will continue to do and some of our contemporaries. And I'll pick out a couple at random. Brighton and Hove Council along the coast, very similar kind of size to us, very similar demographic. Their leader was recently introducing their budget proposals and said that they've got nothing but difficult decisions to make. They are still £12 million shortfall in their budget, as opposed to our £10+ million in surplus, and increasing the council tax by the maximum and going for a lot of service cuts. And again, our main competitors, we often like to talk about Bristol in a kind of friendly tug of war. But again, you look at their most recent budget proposals, they are still £20 million short in terms of a budget gap for this year. Again, going for full council tax. They're cutting parks by 1.5 million, and they're cutting libraries by 1.4 million as well. What we have in front of us here is we are not closing leisure centres, we're not closing wide-scale facilities. We are taking efficiencies, we're creating new sources of income, and we are presenting a surplus this year. Look around the country, many other councils are having to make much harder, tougher decisions than we are. So I'm really proud of the work we've done, but as you said, the job isn't done, and we'll keep on straining right until the last minute to improve the position further. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and yeah, but I certainly appreciate and endorse those comments. What I'm going to do now, actually, I was going to come to the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and then I'll come to Anne Richards and then other councillors. So, but we had a long and interesting discussion at Councillor Lawrence Williams' overviewing the Scrutiny Committee earlier this week. I believe it was on Monday evening. Appreciated the opportunity to take members through the budget proposals and hear some feedback. And perhaps Councillor Williams, you could reflect on that discussion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Leader. It was a lengthy meeting, to say the least. We had 2 items on the agenda, transformation and the published budget papers that you have before you today. We had a full and sometimes frank discussion, and there were no recommendations as a result of the meeting. So that's briefly what occurred. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And it was useful to reflect on some of the councillors' views as well. So and I also use that meeting to again request for any other feedback from individual councillors or groups as well. So that invitation stays open. So thank you for the time. Lawrence. Okay, so perhaps now I mentioned the work we've been doing in terms of update and making sure we've got the latest position to reflect on at full council. And Adam, perhaps you could come in and just update.
Thank you, Chair. And just for the purpose of tape, my name is Adam Richins. I'm the Service Director for Finance for BCP Council. By way of an update, I think it's first of all just worth me setting out the fact that every year we go through a process with government where they set out the local government finance settlement. And what they do is they issue a provisional settlement just before Christmas, almost as close to Christmas Day as they can get it. And then they issue a final settlement sometime early in February. We received the final settlement for 23-24 earlier in the week. And normally, when we have a final settlement, there is very minor changes to the provisional settlement. Normally you get maybe £1,000 or £2,000 difference either way, up or down. However, this year, we've been reviewing the information that they issued later on Monday, and the indication is that it will give us an additional headroom, probably of about to £546,000. So there now needs to be a period of reflection on that £546,000 and actually how we then apply that, because clearly that's additional resources over and above those that were assumed in the budget report. That's a substantive item in front of you on the agenda today. Chair.
That's great and really helpful, and I think just underlines both the work that is going in of times, but also I think we've been sort of, there's an indication in there in terms of our a bit the straining of you working tirelessly to make sure we've got the most updated information, and we will reflect on that update and the other work we're doing before we see if there's amendments we can make to the budget, and we have certainly heard the feedback from our speakers today as well. Okay, fine. So let me now move to wider councillors first. I'm not seeing any of those, so I'll go to showing so cabinet colleagues, and first I'll go to Jude. Back to Jude.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hear about the increased headroom. Grateful to 151 officer for all the work he does, of course. Yes, we did have submissions today from various parties, one in particular with regard to those funding concerns. It's not so much the amount for me, but it's the engagement process again behind that. If we're able to look at that, then that's well and good. But it's as to engagement, obviously there needs to be a lead-in time with any plans that any particular body on our behalf putting in place, and that certainly fetters those plans if they have considered they're able to budget for work going forward over the next year period, and then they find suddenly they can't. That work in the main with regard to a particular submission was very much work that they're doing on behalf of our residents. So can we please be more mindful with regard to engagement with any bodies that we are obviously considering curtailing or reducing funding, so that they indeed have time to put their own managerial aspirations in place and their own plans in place. I think that's key, but I'm pleased to hear that there may be some wriggle room, so to speak, with regard to that issue, and my grateful thanks to the 151 officer.
Yeah, thank you very much, and absolutely, and I'm really well, genuinely proud to say that this is, as far as I'm aware, the most engaged on budget process we've ever put forward. I was just reflecting actually when you were speaking, Councillor Butt, in my effective speech when I was becoming the leader of this authority, I said we wanted to put members at the heart of the administration, and we wanted to put the public, very, very much at the heart of everything we do. And so we, in terms of budget setting, we've been able to put a budget cafe process in, which we've then extended. So we now see two detailed all member sessions, one after the settlement, which has been really helpful and well received, and more importantly, we're able to, and I believe it's Lisa Stoochbury and her team were able to do an engagement exercise with our comms colleagues, a 5-week full engagement exercise, which we see the details of in this report, and that engagement has impacted and made influenced our budget decisions. We've not done that before, certainly not that I've been aware of, and I'm really proud that we're basically making sure we're underlining, and the work you're doing in your engagement lead role, that engagement is going to be central to everything we do, because that's what what is right, and putting our members of the public at the heart of what we do is absolutely right. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so let's see if we have any other comments from Cabinet colleagues. As we say, we're still a work in progress here. I just want to reiterate that we have worked from this, through August onwards, when we've known this. Well, actually in June, we first reflected on the cost of living in June, and we've again worked in August onwards. So huge amount of work. We'll keep going, and thank you, Councillor Kelly-Jane.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I just wanted really to thank the chief executives and other than my staff members of the people who work hard within our communities all the time, every single day. They are on the front line and they know what's happening there. And so I appreciate the fact that they've come here this morning. I appreciate the work they do, and I know that we're all working very hard to make sure that we can allow them to continue that work in the future. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Okay, so I'll just sum up briefly. And I think in doing that, we know the process we're in. We should actually reflect on where we are in terms of longer term financial sustainability. This is a process that impacts this year, as in the upcoming year 23-24. But we also need to reflect on the coming 4 years, and we've got an MTFP. So in that, we need to we've had an environment that has significantly challenged us over a number of years. We've responded to that really well with surplus, but we're still in this budget decided to invest an extra £1.9 million into our unearmarked reserves, which is a really strong commitment to long-term financial sustainability. We'd put in previously, but we're putting £700,000 a year to increase our reserve position. But where our expenditure and our commitments have gone up, we wanted to raise that. So this year is a one-off, and we're putting 1.9 million in, and then having £700,000 every year going forward to our unearmarked reserves, which is strong. The budget you see in front of you, still maintains the, I believe it's 2.25 million contingency, which is a strong statement in terms of allowing us to deal with further pressures as they come up. And actually, just reflect briefly on the transformation programme we've got in front of us. Our MTFP is largely balanced over the next 4-year period because of the savings and efficiencies we are expecting and targeting around transformation. Councillor Broad had reflected on other authorities across the country. There are very, very few upper tier authorities in the UK in a stronger financially and sustainable position as this authority, when you look at the medium-term financial plans, and in fact ours is largely balanced. We do need to deliver on our transformation programme. That's this cabinet, whoever leads the authority after the elections, and CMB's biggest goal, and we must be committed to that. But if we do that, we'll have a modern authority, we'll have a financially sustainable authority, and we'll have an authority that all our residents can be proud of. Okay, fine. Let's move to the votes. We've got a long list of recommendations there. I won't go through all of them, but you've got those in front of you. From the information we have in front of us, if I can ask all those in favour to please show. Thank you. That is passed. And we look forward to bringing that forward to council next in a week on Tuesday. Fine. So move now to agenda item 9, which is Transforming Cities Fund, the end of year report, and I believe we're coming to Councillor Broadhead.
Chair, and I'm leading this paper in the absence of Councillor Mike Green, who's away at the moment, but also because I am actually on the board of the Transforming Cities Fund as well. As you mentioned, this is the end of year report, so it details all of the progress that's been made over the last year and a bit. Again, we sound like a broken record talking about inflation and cost of living, but of course it has dramatically affected most aspects of any part of the world, actually, but particularly those building projects where just the cost of everything has gone up, and that's why I'm really pleased with the level of commitment that our partners in Transforming Travel have shown, and actually their record of delivery. We have the Department for Transport that sits on our board as well, and I think it's safe to say that they are quite impressed with the fact that, particularly compared to some around the country, we've continued to deliver in these circumstances. We've had to adapt as time goes on and look at which parts of the network need the focus on, particularly in terms of their more strategic nature, stands deliver the full programme as intended through that combination of inflationary pressures alongside the changes in government standards around some of these sustainable travel programmes. But at Port, and indeed in the appendix, the stakeholder newsletter, it highlights a number of the parts of the programme that are now in place, everything from walking and cycle paths all the way through Bournemouth, because it's a pan-Dorset programme as well, upgraded cycle paths and footpaths in Kings Park, cycle and walking improvements around Halls Bay, and a number of other parts as well. We've also helped fund the expansion of the Beryl Bikes rental scheme in Christchurch, so there's now 275 bikes available, 50 new locations throughout the Christchurch area, which gives that parity of that offer across the BCP region, as well as expanding it to the outside of our urban areas that border the Dorset Council area as well. So a tremendous amount of work that's been going on, and again, I'd like to put on record the really positive work that team have been doing in the circumstances. In light of the inflationary trail, and it details in this report that government is doing a further review of all of the, I think it's 11 or 12 TCF programs across the country, just to see how they're adapting to the programme before they make final decisions. I don't think we feel that the TCF programme is as a wider network is at risk. What we might well see is a reallocation of funds from government from some areas that may be underperforming, perhaps to areas that are performing well in the circumstance, which actually I think is quite positive for us, because we consistently, I think, are one of the top ranked performing programs within the Transforming Cities Fund programme. So although government are taking a comprehensive review in light of the environment, we have been told to keep on delivering as much as possible, and the very fact that we've actually had a cheque for 13.7 million from Department for Transport during that review, I think is a very good indication and signal business as usual, and indeed we continue to press on with work and make those decisions, of course, as I mentioned, adapting the programme as necessary as costs move around. So that's a summary of the programme. I think the recommendation is to note the progress to date. I'd urge everyone to have a little look through that stakeholder newsletter. It really shows that in a difficult environment we keep on delivering. And the final point that I would make is, it was the Conservative administration that secured this funding pre-local government reorganisation, £100 million investment into our roads in the area. When we were in opposition, we saw a change in direction for the programme, which was a little bit more focused on less of the carrot, more of the stick, and looking at closing roads and kind of almost punishing car users to encourage people towards sustainable transport, a tactic that we fundamentally disagree with. So our significant realignment of the programme has been around your travel, your choice. We all know that we have a major congestion problem across the area, and we all know that the more people choose to travel more sustainably, the less congestion and the more options there are then for people that have to use the car. We firmly believe being anti-car and closing roads and punishing car users is not the way to do it, and that's why we've very focused and geared the programme under our leadership to make sure that we are, yes, providing new cycle routes, new safe pedestrian routes and bus improvements, we're not doing it by closing roads to car users, because we firmly believe that that choice needs to be in the hands of those that travel. So your travel, your choice, and I think the programme's going extremely well. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And coming to Councillor Beverly Dunlop to second, Bev.
Thank you, Chairman. This one works. This one works just the same.
I believe you need to mute your.
Want me to switch the microphone?
Yeah. We just had a small echo, and it'd probably be, if you're able to use the microphone, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, I have to forgive my hearing vagaries. I have a speech tone problem, so some people I can hear and some people I can't. Right, yes, I'm not sure there's been much left for me to say actually, but what I would like to say about the transforming lives bit, and what I'm hearing is a lot of people talking about how they are doing more cycle journeys, how they're doing a bit more walking, how their children are doing more cycling, going to school more on bikes, and that's that change that you want. It's that slow change when you talk about the more travel, your travel, your choice. It is about that slow change, and as more people realise they can do a bit more sustainably, it reduces that traffic, and those that really must use the car and they need to be allowed to use that car can continue to do so. But I have residents talking to me, they're actually writing and saying, this is brilliant, thank you. You know, it's changing their children's lives, they're feeling better, they're getting out more. And there are some lovely stories actually that are floating about at the moment. There's two in particular I've seen. One is about an elderly gentleman who's got himself a trike, and he talks about how much safer he feels and how he can get out and get exercise, which is lovely. And I think the other one that's really worth a mention is the bike bus, the Barrack Road bike bus, and what's that done? It's about getting children on the road safely and changing their lives. So I'm very happy to second this paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. Okay, so I'll first come to other members of wider council, and I've got Councillor Lawrence Williams showing. Lawrence, I presume, yeah. Good morning.
Good morning again. Say that I was a bit sceptical about the Kings Park element of this, and Councillor Broadhead rightly insisted that I come and have a look for myself at the work in progress. And I have to say I was very impressed. And now that the section through our ward's finished, or virtually finished, I have to say it's particularly good. It has enhanced the area in as much as the infrastructure that was put in place will benefit everybody concerned eventually. And I eat my words when I said I didn't think it was very good. It is marvellous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that ringing endorsement. Really appreciate it. Okay, I've got next. I've got Councillor Diana Butler. Good morning, Diana.
Morning, Leader. Thank you very much. I've just got two comments on this. I haven't seen any data for the Beryl bikes, the uptake, the numbers, the journeys made. It'd be quite interesting to know all that. And also, the other thing is, I'm a bit worried about the cyclists using roads that are adjacent to cycleways. The other day I saw two cyclists on the road when there was a perfectly good walkway, cycleway right next to it. So I don't know whether there's any way that we can enforce that more, because it's actually defeating the object in some areas. So that's the only negative I would put forward, but that is a problem. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for those comments. What I'll do is also a portfolio to sum up at the end and acknowledge that the comments, questions made. Right, now move to members of Cabinet. First of all, Councillor Jude.
Thank you. You'll be pleased to hear I have something positive to say for a change. I'm very pleased to see that section 17 on the report, you've got a specific area which is communication, consultation, stakeholder, public engagement, which outlines everything that's taken place, which of course can be evidenced. I think this is a very useful piece, but I really believe that it should follow in all our agenda items. So I would ask please if some consideration could be put forward that this type of piece as follows with other requirements, which are summary of financial implications, legal implications. If we could always have a summary with regards to communication, consultation, stakeholder, public engagement, I think that would be very useful for the public to understand actually what sits behind these projects and how we're actually landing them with regard to public engagement. Thank you.
Yeah, and as we're on our journey to improve all of that, we need to work on areas of best practice, don't we? Okay, fantastic. So I don't see any of us showing, so perhaps come back to Councillor Broadhead to sum up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to colleagues for your comments as well. Councillor Williams, it's great to hear your endorsement, and thanks for checking out the Kings Park the route, which I agree, you know, and I use it fairly regularly. It's a real enhancement, and the more we can encourage people to feel safe when they can get about in different ways, the more people will choose to do it. So it isn't about forcing people, it's about encouraging them, and the high quality of some of these new sustainable routes, I think is there for all to see, and we're already seeing increased usage. An added point on that one, we've got a nice picture of you and I in high vis, because we were also boxing clever when we're doing a number of these schemes. So the one in your ward in particular, I was really pleased at precisely the time that they were digging up the roads and digging up the pavements to put this in, we used that opportunity to fit some fibre cables as well. So I think that's exactly what councils should be doing, using the opportunity to think, well, hang on a minute, while we're digging something up, should we be putting something in? And if only our partners in the utility companies worked more closely with us on that, despite our constant pestering. So another plea to them, come and talk to us about your programmes, because we're doing a lot of work anyway, and let's be as joined up as possible. With regards to Councillor Butler's points, I can answer directly. I mean, it's not strictly a part of this paper, which is about our transforming travel program. The sustainable routes with the Beryl bike programme are obviously related, and I think we've had recent statistics to show that our Beryl bike programme is the biggest in the country outside of London and the most successful, and I think that's a real vote of approval. We've had around 1.4 million trips by Beryl bikes since their launch, and when questioned, 30% of those that have taken those Beryl bikes said that they would have driven instead. So that's 30%, you know, journeys that have been avoided, quite aside from being, you know, really positive way to get around as well. And again, we've seen the e-scooters trial for Beryl as well, and we've got similar statistics to show. I think again it has been one of the most successful e-scooter trials across the country, and similar statistics of people that might have taken a car journey that are now going in sustainable ways. Chairman, I use the Beryl bikes and scooters quite a lot as well, particularly useful if you're catching the train somewhere, you don't have to drive, you can use a scooter, get there. And as we've, you know, the statistic that always blew my mind with transforming travel is that if we can convince just 5% of people that use their cars for journeys of fewer than 2 kilometres not to drive, to either walk or take the bus or catch or take a bike, we pretty much solve all of our congestion issues across the BCP region. So it's not a big number of people choosing to do differently, which then enables those that really need to do so. And then the final point for Diana Butler's comments, you know, about people obeying the rules. I agree. We can't force people to use cycle lanes. It is a personal choice, and it's perfectly within the highway code for people to use the road instead of cycle lanes. But again, with the improvements to the quality of these, we are seeing the added safety that you get for being separated from the road. Not only should hopefully encourage more people to take up that option, but crucially encourage people who have been dissuaded from doing so, particularly those with children, for instance, want to cycle to school. If you can do that in a much safer way, then it frees up the roads and it helps people's quality of life as well. So thank you for the comments, and again, great work for the team, and more of the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great. Okay, so I've got the recommendations as per. If everybody could, if in favour, please show. Yes, and that is again passed. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item 10, which is BCP Future Places outline business case for Chapel Lane. I'll speak to this shortly, but I'm really pleased. This is, I think, one of the first outline business case we've been taking forward, and it will obviously reflect on the really detailed overview and scrutiny we had. So I'm delighted we've seen this here, and Councillor Broadhead will propose.
Thank you very much, Chairman. You're exactly right. It's been a year on from setting up Future Places. This is the first outline business case to come to Cabinet. We've been approving a few of those with delegated decisions, and I referenced Constitution Hill earlier, but this is the first one that we are bringing to Cabinet. And indeed, you're correct, we had a really full, almost 5-hour scrutiny session the other evening as well. We tested and teased and look at the proposals that are coming forward from Future Places. It's a council-owned entity who we designed and put in place to look at some of the council owned assets that we have, the development opportunities, and to bring some of the country's best expertise to take these forward, not just in a viable way, but to use that opportunity to really enhance our placemaking. Long-term stewardship model is pretty central to the key. I'll go over the outline business case in a moment, but worth a quick reminder of I mentioned why Future Places is so positive in terms of that focus on long-term placemaking, but also the financial model, which I keep getting some opposition councillors saying it's really, really complicated. It's not that complicated at all. In the old days, when we were looking at our regeneration aspirations, when councils do that in-house, they will have a team of officers that will have to bring forward the proposals, they have to commission lots of pieces of work, and that always comes from the revenue budget. So that comes from the same budget that we have to provide our social care services and others, which means that there's always a tug and tease, a tug of war, pressure on those budgets. So even though regeneration and placemaking is absolutely key, if you're having to make difficult decisions like we are in this inflationary environment, between looking after our most vulnerable or trying to bring forward our regeneration aspirations, you can see how there's very difficult decisions there. And what we've done with Future Places, by having it as a fully municipally owned company, but slightly apart, and this is very similar to what many other councils do across the country, is that we're enabled to take the cost of that regeneration directly from the projects instead. So by having these touch points, as I've called them, so the outline business case comes forward, Future Places bring forward what their suggestion is, one suggestion for that site. We then approve that the whole of the cost of preparing that is then capitalised. We then approve it to the full business case, which is what we'll be doing today for Chapel Lane. And again, the cost of that is also enabled to be capitalised as well. And so long as we see that project through, we then take the entirety of the cost for these regeneration schemes from the project itself and not from the council taxpayers' pockets. And it's a novel way of doing it. We're not the first, many others do it. And it means that we can get on with our regeneration without having to fund it from the rest of the council services. It's really quite simple. Now, there are risks involved in that if you don't see that project through, you can't capitalise, and that becomes a pressure on the revenue budget. But to be honest, in the past, every single regeneration project we were doing came out of the revenue budget anyway. So there's a real positive financial impact of doing it this way, quite aside from having some of the best regeneration minds in the country really helping us to take forward our proposals. So what we're approving today is the work that's been done to date and the proposal coming forward for the Chapel Lane development in Poole, and that looks at the Chapel Lane car park, takes half of that car park, the north part of that car park, and recommends a site which will provide 27 new homes, as well as some active frontage on the ground floors, helping to regenerate that part of Poole, and also as part of the scheme doing some what we call greening park as well. So we will be losing a few car parking spaces as part of this, but in the paper and in the outline business case, there's conversations about how we can consolidate that in other areas. And again, I think we've got relative cross-party approval on this. The previous administration had already been proposing a development on this site as well. So fundamentally, I think we've got relative cross-party approval that we should be doing something with this bit. And again, thank you to the extensive overview and scrutiny session, where again, I think I didn't really hear any voices saying that we shouldn't be progressing with this scheme at all. Where there was some dissent in the scrutiny meeting was one councillor in particular saying that instead of the recommendation that we've had from Future Places, that the council develop this site out and retain ownership as a rental project, which again provides local homes for local people as well as an income source. His view was that we should be putting that out and just kind of flogging it off instead and letting the private market develop it. It's absolutely a choice that we could make. We've made a commitment that we should be investing in our assets into the future, as well as looking at new funding streams, which retaining it from a council ownership point of view does. And also I've been working really closely with our cabinet lead member for Poole Rejuvenation, Steve Barron, who is very supportive of progressing with the scheme, so long as we keep that development in council ownership as a rental scheme as well. So on balance, whilst I heard that, I would be agreeing with Future Places recommendation, which is that we keep this in-house. We look at a build to rent mixed use residential scheme with that kind of crucial active frontage as well. And as part of this recommendation, we will also agree to move to the next stage of the process, which is a full business case. So the outline business case, very high level, looking at what you should do with the site with some high level viability. The next phase is to get into the detail, do a tremendous more consultation as well about exactly what this scheme should look like, and progress it to the final full business case, which will come back to the council as well. On that consultation point as well, also heard loud and clear from our excellent lead member for engagement, Councillor Jude Butt, who again made in that meeting the recommendation that although we have an extensive engagement period planned for working the full business case, that we should take this opportunity as a first outline business case to assess whether we've done enough pre-consultation as well. It's a tough one because on the one hand you want to consult with an idea of what to do, but actually I do accept a point, and we've been talking to the Future Places team who have been doing a tremendous amount of wider consultation just to make sure that at that early stages for our outline business cases that we're front loading a lot of consultation as well. Lots been done on this scheme, particularly with the local stakeholders around the scheme, but I fully accept her plea that we might just want to kind of beef that up in the pre-OBC stage as well. So first one we're receiving, sorry to go on with the background of Future Places, but I think it's useful, and really pleased that we seem to have widespread support at the scrutiny meeting for getting on with this, delivering it in-house with the council, keeping these local homes for local people and regenerating this part of Poole. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really pleased to see this and happy to second. One of the things I reflected on in the overview and scrutiny meeting was some of the and actually it was reflected also in the overview and scrutiny meeting I was in this week, around the quality of the outline business cases coming forward. I thought that was fantastic. We had a recent meeting of the Poole Charter Trustees where we had the COO of Future Places coming and talk through, another one of those items, and in terms of the Poole Civic, hugely well received, and you can see that the calibre of what's coming forward and the commerciality of it as well. So absolutely delighted about this. I think just sort of reflecting on there's more homes in Poole. We've already moved forward on I think it's over 160 homes in Hamworthy that we're bringing local homes to local people. But we've got building, and this is again more homes. So just commend the work that you and Councillor Barron are doing in terms of actually delivering on some regeneration in Poole, which is a strong commitment for us. Okay, so. Let me just see if I've got any other members looking to come in. First of all, I've got Councillor Diana Butler. Diana.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd like to specify as a council who actually rents the accommodation, whether it's going to be actually local people with housing need, because that's the people that we need to cater for, first of all. If you could just answer that for me, thank you.
Really, really good point, and it's something we'd agree with, and we will. I'm sure Councillor Broadhead will sum up. I'm not seeing any other people come in. Any members of Cabinet wish to come and speak to this? So then perhaps I'll ask Councillor Broadhead to sum up, and I'm sure you'll respond to Councillor Butler's question.
Yeah, thank you, and good question from Councillor Butler. The real benefit we have, as opposed to just flocking these schemes off to the private sector, is that we maintain that control going forward. Control's sometimes a dirty word, but we set up future places to really step change our regeneration, our placemaking, and doing that. And we've seen before that even through the planning restrictions that we can create, and unless we with some of these key positions really maintain an interest ourselves, we can't have that control over either the placemaking side or indeed the tenure side. It's not all about council control, and a number of the other future places recommendations that are coming forward around other schemes are to work with the private sector and not for the council to deliver these things. So it's not all about us doing absolutely everything, particularly as we look forward to the wider schemes that we've got. But particularly for these areas, I do think it's really important, as Councillor Butler says, that we maintain some element of control. In direct answer to a question, that will be looked at as part of the next stage of the full business case. I think the proposal at the moment is a build to rent, so it will be a rental offer, which again, as I mentioned, helps with the long-term financial stability, bringing new income sources in as well. The Constitution Hill development, as I said earlier on, is probably going to be more mixed, and we have our wider CNAS programme that I referenced earlier that is really turbocharging affordable rents and shared ownership and lots of other things that really benefit those most in need as well. We do also have to recognise that there is a very, very big market of open market rental as well. That's what we're doing on the Hamworthy scheme. We had our independent housing needs assessment that we did as part of our work on the new local plan, which really highlighted still the paucity of private rented sector quality accommodation out there. So we know that there is a huge demand for rental going forward, which is why we are, and it really helps with viability as well. It helps us deliver these schemes as well. So yeah, we'll be looking at that as part of the next stage. Can't give you any answers at the moment. What I would say, final word on rental schemes, the reason I use the term local homes for local people, and I'm talking about rental schemes, is people for second homes or people from out of the area don't rent. They will buy. You very, very rarely find a second homeowner that will rent a scheme. So just by having these as the ability to rent, they are automatically for local people, regardless of tenure. So you're absolutely right. We do need to look at the balance of tenure in the right location across our wider portfolio. But the benefit of the rental offer is income for the council, control, long-term holding of that asset, and definitively providing local homes for local people.
Great, thank you very much for that, and thanks for the contributions as well. Okay, so let me just go through the recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. That's great, and it's great to have a first future places on a business case approved. Fantastic. Look forward to many more. Okay, so then we're going to move on now to agenda item 11, which is the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, reforms to national planning policy and implications for the emerging BCP local plan. We had a couple of statements from interested members of the public and stakeholders earlier on, which we appreciated, and I'll come to Councillor Broadhead now to propose and move that item.
Thank you. Paper which really just updates on the changing position of reforms to national planning policy and the implications that will have for our new and the very first local plan for Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. Government have announced proposals, and we've set out our consultation response, and really was a good opportunity to bring this to Cabinet to get approval for that consultation response, as well as look at the I think really positive impact that will have on the choices that we would make as part of our new local plan. Colleagues will surely be fed up with me talking about the local plan, but it has presented by the old method, the standard methodology that the government were leading on, and all the rules around that, with a real issue for the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area. We have, at the very best of times, delivered about 1,300 new homes per year across the BCP region, but the government standard methodology figure dictates within that formula that we had to plan for a local plan at around 2,800 homes, which is over double what we've ever delivered. And as part of that, it was almost impossible not to have complete and utter wide-scale greenbelt release as part of trying to meet that very, very hard and completely inflated housing target. And we had a plan for that previously, and our plan was multi-pronged, to maybe use the expression. First of all, that standard methodology is riddled with holes, and the reason that our figure was so high was because within that standard methodology there was an error in calculating inward migration. So bluntly speaking, it made the assumption that all of our students that come to the area, and bear in mind 3 universities, don't leave. Well, we know that's not the case. The Office for National Statistics had done some work on this, and actually just fixing that error in the standard methodology brought our suggested homes that we have to plan for to about 1,600, 1,700. Still more than we've delivered before, but much more achievable, and coincidentally almost identical to what our independent housing needs assessment of the homes that we really need for our internal data suggested that we needed to plan for anyway. We were already trying to work that route. It was a difficult one, but we were making the case with government, and I've continued to lobby directly to the Secretary of State on this issue. And that's why I was absolutely delighted when Michael Gove made announcements recently, and that's what they're consulting on, to strengthen the protection for Greenbelt and basically take Greenbelt off the table. If you do not want to have to release Greenbelt, you don't have to. That will now be a local choice alongside these proposals, as well as giving much greater emphasis on placemaking, character of places, and an actual local need. Precisely, Chairman, what we were doing anyway. So now we are able to kind of carry on what we were doing, but with the added confidence that both the timetable for our local plan is definitively on track now. We're not having to, get our pointy elbows out in the way that we might have had to before, but also now that we can definitively pledge, and I've made that pledge in full council, that certainly as a Conservative administration, we make the firm pledge to protect our green belt. It's sacred land. And we shouldn't be developing on it, and as a firm pledge of this Conservative administration to protect that green belt, something that I've said before and that we tried to do, and now we can absolutely commit and pledge to do. We heard from some developers recently that were saying we're kind of preempting the consultation by changing direction on this. The argument I would make, Chairman, is that we're not changing direction. I'd made a commitment to protect as much greenbelt as possible before. We now can definitively make that commitment. So it hasn't completely and utterly changed the direction of the local plan process. But this is a very, very firm indication from government, and I've heard it directly from the Secretary of State that this is what they intend to do, subject to any changes that come through for the consultation. I think it's completely correct that we look at getting ahead of that and feeding in these new proposals into our process, particularly because it makes such a dramatic difference on what we might have to do if we failed in our previous attempts. So the new process enables us to protect our green belts and open spaces, and we face that challenge more keenly than most local authorities. We are an urban area, but we have the sea on one side of us, swathe of green belt around the northern part, 22 triple SIs, which would make and great land as well, not just terrible green belt that you have in some areas. So we're really keen on avoiding that. We can now avoid it, and we can also keep much more firm handles on placemaking as we move forward to a brownfield-led urban development local plan as we continue to build the homes that people do very much need. So really welcome the government's direction on this, and I'm really pleased with the work the planning team have done with this consultation response as well. They sent it to me, and quite unusually there was very little I disagreed with in their consultation response, which is quite something, which shows how aligned we are and shows what a crack team we have in the council. Thank you.
Absolutely, and just sort of building on it, I think in terms of, we often talk about what influence do we have as a council now, as a larger council, and the necessity to lobby and have a voice in central government. The fact that we've been clear, the leadership you've shown at a national level in terms of this, and our officer team as well, and the government policy is now very much, appears to be very much in line with our aspirations, which is fantastic. It's fundamental to us, and we've been clear. And it's a commitment we make it, we make as an administration, and we will continue to be making. So yeah, very happy to second this item. Okay, do we have any members of wider council wishing to come in on this paper? I'm not seeing that. Okay, so do any members of cabinet wish to come in? Okay, no. So if there's nothing in terms of summing up, I will move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's great. Just I was hoping we might have got through the agenda items in advance of this. I've got a commitment I need to make, so Councillor Broadhead will chair the remainder of this meeting. Just before I do go, we've had some really positive news this morning around our levelling up bid, successful levelling up bid. We got in, and we've had an email while we've been moving forward, and we've actually got the full amount of money. But the deluxe have said we've now got effectively £20 million. It's about £7,000 short of £20 million, but I'll round up, and that's great news. So on that note, I would leave you in the capable hands of Councillor Broadhead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And yeah, it's quite nice to be getting else during the course of the week from government announcing more money. We had earlier on the extra £500,000 as per the uplift to the local settlement, but this is absolutely brilliant news with the levelling up fund. We were delighted to get £18.2 million from government anyway. It meant that we couldn't quite fund our full bid, so now to get 19.99 million not only is another nice chunk of money, but it does enable the full proposals in our levelling up round 2 bid to progress forward, and I'll be really delighted to be working with the team on that, and again thank you to government for that support. I'll now move on to agenda item number 12, which are options, about options to support the health of those facing homelessness, and I will pass over to my colleague Councillor Karen Rampton to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I really welcome the opportunity to bring forward this paper. And just a brief history, if I may. So last March, Cabinet approved the acquisition of St Stephen's Church Hall on the basis that a tender process would find a provider to refurbish and deliver services with a focus on health from there for people who are homeless or facing homelessness, and this followed a detailed consideration of other potential venues. We know from experience, people who are homeless often trust and work better with providers in the voluntary sector than with the council. And we recognise and we welcome opportunities to deliver good services by working in partnership. Chair, before I move on to the rest, I should have said initially that there are 2 appendices listed which should actually be listed as background papers, as they are published works and therefore they're in the public domain already. So I apologise for that slight error. So going back to the history, following the open tender process, we received 1 bid, and that was from Hope Place Community Interest Company. They met the criteria with a score of 50%. But unfortunately, subsequent concerns by officers in terms of their refurbishment plans of the property and alternative funding, an officer decision record was issued, confirming that the council would not proceed to purchase St Stephen's Church Hall. However, Hope Place Community Interest Company, I'm just going to call it CIC from now on, Hope Place CIC are in ongoing discussions to secure a lease on the hall to enable them to continue to deliver health support services from this location. The names of the directors of Hope Place are in the body of the report, and they include individuals who will be familiar to many of us: Dr. Maggie Kirk from Health Bus, Alistair Dotsett-Purser of Faithworks, the Reverend Dr. Gareth Sherwood from YMCA, Chris Gumbrell of Brew House and Kitchen, to name a few. All are well-known and respected, dedicated professionals who share a vision of tackling homelessness by reducing health inequalities and using their skills, knowledge and experience in various fields to provide support, advice, information and practical skills in a multidisciplinary setting to enable individuals to live a longer and mentally, physically well life. BCP Council has a homelessness and rough sleeping strategy which was co-produced with partners. Its core aim being improving health. We have a clear ambition to end homelessness with a strong focus on upstream prevention. We know that 45% of homeless individuals suffer from poor mental and physical health and have a very reduced life expectancy, to the point that it's about 43 for women, which is just absolutely shocking. Rough sleepers are often dependent on alcohol and drugs. They're extremely vulnerable to abuse, to assault, to weather conditions and poor diet. And the services in BCP, both existing and new, are without a shadow of a doubt vital to improve their well-being. Moving on to the three options presented in this report, and I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to start with option 3, which says do nothing. It's in here and it has to be considered. But frankly, for the reasons I've outlined above, it isn't really a viable option in my opinion. Yes, it saves BCP money, but at what human cost? Option 2, to open a homelessness grant fund of £50,000 per annum for 5 years and a one-off capital sum of £250,000. This option offers an opportunity to voluntary organisations in the BCP area to apply. It does align to our homelessness and rough sleeper strategy. It could support diverse projects so that the funding could be spread further, and our officers consider it to be prudent. However, this option does not support the Cabinet ambition and decision that St Stephen's Hall is the right place in the right location for delivering a health hub. Choosing this option would further delay the health hub project. It would at best take several months and much officer time to set up a grant giving panel to manage the process and make the award, and that's should organisations even apply. There is an option for Dorset Community Foundation to administer the process, and they're an excellent organisation and they would ensure due diligence, but there'd be an admin fee payable, and again time would be needed to set up the process. When we originally went out to tender, the offer was for a capital amount more than this £250,000 and a revenue sum of £50,000 per annum to run a service. May I remind you that only one organisation applied, and that was Hope Cake. Option 1, to direct grant Hope Cake with £50,000 per annum revenue for 5 years and a one-off capital grant of £250,000. This option supports Hope Cake's intention of operating a homelessness health hub from St Stephen's Church Hall. It supports the decision made by this Cabinet to work with a provider to have health services delivered from this location. It supports those who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, and it reinforces the work that Hope are already engaged with. By allocating a grant to Hope, we will be demonstrating clearly not only our commitment to supporting our more vulnerable people, but also working in partnership with an organisation who, it's true, are new and as yet don't have published accounts, but individually they are well known in their fields and who they have come together with a common goal of providing an inspirational place where people can access the services they need. A number of councillors have contacted me, and they are across the political spectrum, and they have voiced support for option 1. Cabinet members, I hope you will agree with me that option 1 meets our stated ambitions to work in partnership with a provider who can deliver homelessness health services from the home, to support our homelessness strategy and work to reduce homelessness across BCP. And finally, and most importantly, for us to move forward without further delay. I'm asking you to support option 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rampton. Before I move to colleagues from Cabinet Plus, I'll ask if there are any other colleagues from outside the council that wish to speak. Can I? Yeah, I've got Councillor Evans.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Firstly, I've got a declaration of interest in that my housemate is considering becoming a trustee for this charity, but hasn't actually done any formal work for them so far. I saw my lovely big issue seller in Poole Town Centre this weekend and I asked her why she hadn't been around for a few weeks, and she told me she'd been in hospital. The condition she was admitted for was something that could quite easily have been controlled with routine medical treatment. And this is why having accessible medical and social support is so essential. I met Dr. Maggie Kirk at the Dorset Health Inequalities Symposium last week, and I was blown away by the work her and others have been doing on the health bus. This work has received national recognition and is a real source of pride for BCP. As we've heard, she's now teamed up with other leaders in business and voluntary sectors to form a community interest company called Hope Place. I remembered something in the Cabinet papers that was coming up about the Homelessness Health Hub, so I had a closer look when I got home, and I was really worried by what I saw. As Councillor Rampton has already said, in March 2022, the Cabinet agreed to acquire St Stephen's Church Hall and for it to be refurbished to provide homeless health services, and the tender process was run to find a provider. Hope Place submitted a bid. They were the only people who did so, and they did score the minimum amount. They were then informed of the provisional intention to award them the contract in July 2022. Then, for some reason, a decision was made by the Chief Operations Officer not to award the contract. Apparently, this was due to a lack of reassurance that the building refurbishment and ongoing revenue activity could be delivered within the budget, or proof that alternative funding was secured. And as a result, unfortunately, BCP Council didn't purchase St Stephen's Hall. So sorry, just moving down on my page. So I'd like to draw your attention to the Cabinet minutes from March 2022. Cabinet members spoke in support of the project. The leader advised he considered the physical location of the facility and the opportunity to conduct outreach from the location was vital. The Cabinet was advised that working with a partner on this would provide the best value for money option. There were also no other properties in the town centre which would fulfil the requirements for the hub. The portfolio holder advised it was important to not have any delay with delivering this service. Yet nearly a year later, nothing's been done. In the meantime, construction costs have continued to escalate, so it's unlikely any similar work could be done within the suggested budget. Surely it would be better to work with Hope Place CIC to establish a homelessness health hub in St Stephen's Church Hall as originally intended. They've answered the majority of the council's concerns and surely could be helped to address the remainder as the costs have risen. As we've heard, the alternative is to start again with a grant funding process. Maybe no one will apply, leading to a stated further delay of at least 3 months and at a significant cost to us. I'm sure everyone would agree that doing nothing is not an option for a council committed to levelling up. I would therefore urge the Cabinet to vote for option A so this vital work can get underway as soon as possible in everyone's best interests. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your words and support of that option. I'm not seeing any other hands from colleagues outside of Cabinet Plus, so I'll now move to colleagues on the wider Cabinet. I've got Councillor Allen, Councillor Butt, and then Councillor Dunlop. Councillor Allen.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on this. I share one's frustration on how long it's taken us to get to this point, and it has not been an easy process. But I think what we should really take heart from and acknowledge is the fact that the partners that have formed this community interest company and have been totally passionate about this project for the past 4 years, and even before I got involved prior to that, have stuck with us as a council and are still wanting to deliver this. And I think that this is one of the main reasons why we should support them, who are leaders in their field in this area and do amazing work around homelessness. And I think we should definitely choose option 1. We should crack on, we should get this hub, and we should start delivering excellent homeless health care and support for our most vulnerable people in society, those that are homeless or at risk of homelessness, and we should just do it and do it as soon as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Allen. Councillor Jude-Butt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Chairman. With regard to this, hit the nail on the head with regard to provision, etc. I would agree with that, but I'm not here in that instance, but just that's a personal view as councillor. With regard to engagement, it's one of those times where that stream, that item there, which states at the bottom of the report, together with all the other issues around summary of legal implications, etc. A summary of engagement, I think, would have been really useful, because this is engaging with the most vulnerable in our society. And as Councillor Rampton so astutely put it, a lot of individuals in this situation do not like to directly engage with the council. So engaging with this third party sector is certainly a way forward. But I still think we need to understand what engagement was undertaken by that third party sector. I think that is important, and again, a reason why we have that as golden thread that runs through all reports with regard to our summaries at the end of our report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butt. Bit of a dodgy line, but I think we heard most of that, and thank you for your input. Councillor Beverly Dunlop.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that what demonstrates how important this is to us, homelessness, is the fact that we created a lead member for it. And I think that Councillor Allen must be really quite frustrated. And I recall in various meetings, one of the things that's really been stressed here is about the location. And the location has to be where the need is. And I think having an option whereby people could potentially be, I don't know, shunted about, or we have facilities that don't suit where that need is. And I've heard this consistently, that this is the right location, it's accessible, but it's tucked away, it's where it's supposed to be. And the fact that we've been working towards this for a very long time, I just can't see any reason why we wouldn't support option A. And the way we view this has to be around what is best. Option one. What we have to be driven by is, we're committing to making this investment. That's not a question. What we have to be driven by is what is best for the people out there, homeless people, those rough sleeping, and what will work best for them, not what seems to be the best route, I guess, from just simply a council perspective. So I would wholeheartedly support option one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dunlop. Councillor Allen, were you wishing to come back on something?
Yes, very quickly, please. I'd just like to urge Councillor Butt's reference to there not being part of this paper around engagement with people that we would describe as having lived experience. However, there is some very good evidence, particularly gathered by the health bus, that shows that actually this is a facility that has been really well used and really appreciated and acknowledged by the people that come to the St Stephen's and use the health bus, of how vital it is. And there's good evidence that this has had a really positive knock-on effect of admission avoidance for acute care in the hospitals. So I apologise that it's not part of this paper, but there is good evidence, and there is plans for the KIC to widen that engagement to make sure that what is delivered does actually meet the needs of that group of people. But I think it's about the location, it's about the people that have already been delivering healthcare from this setting for so long, but it's also about the relationships that already are in place and remain within this community. And that's, you know, it's so vital that they are part of that conversation, but they have been, and I just wanted to reassure Councillor Butt that they will be in the future, and that it's a big part of our strategy to hear the voice of people with lived experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that clarification. I think it's really helpful, Councillor Allen, as well. Colleagues, I deliberately didn't seek a seconder to Councillor Rampton's proposal because we had 3 proposals on the table, I think it was important for us to have that wider discussion on the pros and cons of each, and I think that was really healthy to hear from a number of people. And again, a number of us have been delving deeper and looking at the 3 very real options that we do have in front of us, because we have to consider them all equally in that regard. And it is absolutely an option to do nothing in this front as well, and many councils I'm sure would, but I certainly agree that it wouldn't be in the spirit of what we're trying to achieve here, particularly with the previous cabinet recommendations around that location. I think Councillor Allen makes a really good point that the centrality of that location in particular is really key to this decision-making process as well. And I personally agree with Councillor Rampton's point that option 2, whilst giving others the opportunity to get involved in this process, does also serve to just keep on delaying this really vital service for those that clearly are in need of it. So I think we've had a healthy discussion. So I have had a proposal for option 1 to recommend option 1 as part of that. Is there anybody that would like to second Councillor Rampton's proposal? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much. Yes, I am really pleased to support option 1 and to second this proposal. There's very little left for me to say, actually. It's been Councillor Rampton and others have been very articulate and absolutely made all the points about the fact that this service has been delivered outside this building for several years and has been so well used by many vulnerable members of the community who will often not engage with council services to the detriment of their well-being. And therefore, the way that it's been delivered, has been delivered by the health bus till now, has been extremely well done. And it's delivered the medical and peripheral services that are so needed by these very vulnerable clients. And I think as well, this particular place is important, not only because it's central, but it's also trusted by these people. They have been going there for years. They will tell their, other rough sleepers that the people there will serve them well. And they are extremely, the people who are running it are very well. I've written it down and now I've lost it, of course. Isn't that awful? Yes, they're experts in their field. They've been doing this kind of work for years and they have the knowledge and ability to deliver those services very well. So in conclusion, I can't say anything more than it's already been said. I'm therefore formally seconding this paper with option 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelly. So we have a proposal which is being proposed and seconded. Councillor Rampton, anything further to add to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you to everybody who has spoken and who has sent messages of encouragement. I'm really encouraged by that and grateful for support. And thank you to Councillor Allen for all her work as the lead member for homelessness. And it's really important that we have that role. I just wanted to add something about that location, because although that is the agreed perfect location to deliver the service and it's already happening there, there's also that opportunity, isn't there, to do that outreach work, to go a bit further, go out to people who for whatever reason can't get to that location or choose not to. So by funding, there is that opportunity to enable that to happen. But otherwise, Chair, I'm delighted by your comments and I'm hoping that Cabinet support option 1.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the healthy grown-up discussion regarding around those options. Colleagues, we have that recommendation in front of us, so I'll now go to the vote. All of those in favour of option 1? Great, and that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you to colleagues for the discussion. I'll now move on to agenda item number 13, which is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund paper, which I'll be leading. A recommendation to accept the grant allocation from government for 4.2 million from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Colleagues will recall that this was an allocation from government. This wasn't a bidding process. Government launched the UK Shared Prosperity Fund as part of the Levelling Up agenda to replace the former ESIF funds with the European Structure and Investment Funds. And within that programme, although it was a financial allocation, it was the Council's job in a very short space of time to decide which of the different menu of options as part of the ones which were provided by government. There were 41 standard targeted interventions or projects which were all around looking at skills and business support. Which of those were most relevant for our area? We had to do it in a very short space of time, and we worked with a number of different partners to draw up those list of proposed interventions to government, and delighted to confirm that was accepted by government. In total, we're getting about £4.2 million for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund award itself. But we're also getting a further 1.7 for the government's Multiply programme, which is about an improved numeracy skills. So in total, over the 3 years of this fund, it's 5.9 million, and the funds are staggered in different ways. So really, the report details the proposals and the interventions that we put forward in detail alongside the government's support for them. Briefly, they fall into 3 different areas. One around local businesses interventions and helping strengthen those local businesses that we have in our area. And there's about 6 different interventions which will be funding and helping as part of that. The second is our community and place interventions, which again looks at how we can improve our place and our community offer, and again work with a number of stakeholders with these grants to help take that forward. And finally, our skills agenda. We have a number of areas that we work very well with and that we are leaders on in skills. We have a number of areas where we need to significantly improve as part of levelling up. And again, things like green skills and some of the basic skills that we sometimes see an added need for in this area will be supported as part of these 17 different interventions as part of this plan. So that's a brief outline. I'd like to thank my colleague, Councillor Toby Johnson, thank you. Toby Johnson, levelling up. So hard that I forgot his surname. On this as our lead member, and also Chris Shepherd, Adrian, Trevitt, and the rest of the economic development team to respond really quickly to this, putting these interventions together, working with all of our stakeholders to make sure that we got this agreed by government, and then the money lands in the bank so that we can try and really make a difference in these areas. Final point, thank you to other council colleagues across all parties as well. We had an all-member seminar on this fairly recently. In order to make sure that we get the best bang for the buck on these skills and local business support, we all have to work together to make sure that we get the message out for the support that's available and work with our local communities. And I was really pleased with the cross-party spirit of working with that all-member seminar for us to present the final approval for government on this and seek councillors' input to help with their local communities and local businesses as well, and I urge them to continue in that effort. So that's the recommendation to accept the £4.2 million grant, and also to delegate authority to the Director of Economic Development in consultation with both the Director of Finance alongside myself to utilise that grant for the investment plan, and to also to develop a oversight, governance and monitoring programme all the way up to the end of this programme in 2025. And I seek a seconder. So whoever got seconding this one, Councillor Kelly, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Broadhead. I almost forgot your surname then. So absolutely really delighted to second this paper. Wonderful news that we were awarded the funding for this, and I think the interventions that we have chosen are absolutely right for our BCP area, and obviously community opportunities that we'll have for engagement, for capacity building, and improvements of local green spaces, which are really important for the health and well-being of our residents. So yes, very delighted to second and look forward to these things coming to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelly. I'll now go to any members outside of Cabinet that wish to speak on this item, and I'm not seeing any indications, in which case I'll move to wider Cabinet. Any other colleagues wishing to ask questions or comment? Nope. In which case we have the recommendation in front of me. I'll take it to the vote. All those in favour? Great, and again, that's unanimous. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in and sharing this this vital support as we try to support our local businesses, communities and places as well. So really, really good news. Item number 14 is any urgent decisions which are taken by the Chief Executive in accordance with the Constitution, of which I don't think there are any. Chief Executive is looking slightly perplexed and now wondering whether there is. So Chief Executive.
Just thinking, I made one this morning.
Okay.
Chairman, if I may, which was the appointment of non-executive directors for BCP Future Places. So we've confirmed those appointments, but we literally confirmed that about 10 minutes ago during the meeting. So.
And that's the ultimate form of multitasking, and that's why you're the chief executive. So we have that decision which is delegated and undertaken by the chief exec, and I think is I believe fills the entirety of the Future Places board now. So we now have a full team of non-executive directors who, and I've seen their CVs and met a few of them. We've got already excellent calibre in the executive team within Future Places, but now we've got a board of people with significant experience both in regeneration, in finance and placemaking and other fields that will help to take that fully municipally owned company to the next level, spearheaded by our independent chair, Sir Bob Kerslake. So delighted to hear about those appointments as well. I'll move to the final item, which is to consider the latest version of the Cabinet Forward Plan, which has been published, and whether there are any comments or additions on that. Councillor Bobby Duff.
Thank you. When I brought the wise and fly tipping proposal that we go out and consult with potential operators, Councillor Toby Johnson asked that we bring back an update report for information purposes, and I request that we put it on the March Cabinet Forward Plan, please, so I can update everyone how that piece of work has gone.
Yeah, I think that's a really important suggestion. I'm really happy to support that proposal as well. The rest of Cabinet happy to add that item onto the March Cabinet Forward Plan. It's a full March agenda, but I do think that's really important to get in, as particularly it was requested. So happy to approve that. Any further comments or suggestions for items on the Cabinet Forward Plan? Not seeing any, in which case at that point I will thank everyone for their attendance, thank those joining both in person and virtually, thank you to officers, thank you to colleagues, and I'll close the meeting.